observe by a moment of silence, and then the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Agent,
Here.
Clegg,
Here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Sanchez,
Here.
Willetts, Woodings. Here. 5 present, 1 absent.
Thank you. And next up, we have council minutes from the work session and meeting of August 30th for approval.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the city council minutes from the work session and regular evening meeting of August 30th, 2022.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thanks. And next up, under special business, we have the reappointment of Andy Erstad to the Building Code Board for a 4-year term ending October 2026.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that we approve the reappointment of Andy Erstad to the Building Code Board for a 4-year term ending October 2026.
Without objection. I'd like to just say a couple of things. Are you planning on saying something? It's wonderful to have you here. Weren't any objections? Well, I want to thank you, Andy, for doing this again. I really think that at times that you're a glutton for punishment. I mean, you have provided so much service over so many years on different committees to our city. Appreciate now seeing your son kind of doing the same thing and the work that we do with him. But when I heard that you were being reappointed to this, I just had to chuckle because it's a great service that you're providing. It's something that many people would think is not very fun. And I know that Jason in particular and our staff team truly appreciates that you're willing to do this again. And I do too. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I could just add a thank you and ditto to everything you said. Thank you for so many long years of service in some of the least obvious positions, but the ones that are most important.
And thank you for being here. All right. With that, you were officially reappointed. Enjoy your next meeting.
Thank you, Andy.
We're going to move into the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There's no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the items removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Any discussion?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to recuse from item 18. It includes Jacobs Engineering.
Noted.
Madam Mayor, I just, and I didn't circle the resolution, so I'm not sure what number it is, but I just want to point out that there's a resolution that has our memorandum of understanding with the Friends of Boise Library, which we noted at our work session earlier, and I think is a really great agreement. So just wanted to note that.
Thank you. And just so the public knows that's here tonight, and it was their 50th anniversary in 2020, but to mark it, I call that the COVID 50. We signed a proclamation in work session and heard from the Friends and really appreciate their service. And with that, clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thanks. We're going to move on to ordinances. We have nothing until 2 on first, second, and third reading.
Madam Mayor, I move that all rules of the council interfering with the immediate consideration of ORD 41-22 and ORD 42-22 be suspended, that the portions of Idaho Code 50-902 requiring an ordinance to be read on 3 different days, twice by title and once in full, be dispensed with, that the records show it has been read the 3rd time in full.
Second.
We have a motion second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries. ORD 41-22, an ordinance amending the language of Boise City Code Title III, Chapter 14, Section 10, subsection A, adding a new subsection 20 entitled Interim Licensing and Terms and Fees, providing for a waiver of the reading rules and providing an effective date. ORD 42-22, an ordinance amending the language of Boise City Code Title III, Chapter 6, Section 18, subsection C, to correct name of first aid education provider, providing for a waiver of the reading rules and providing an effective date.
Madam Mayor, I move that ORD 41-22 and ORD 42-22 be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And now we'll move into new businesses. First, we have quite a few subdivisions. And so with these this evening, because we don't expect testimony, and raise your hands if you're here for one of them. We'll hear first from the city staff to present. We'll then hear whether or not the applicant agrees with the terms and conditions of the staff report. And if so, we can move from there. We don't expect neighborhood associations to attend. So first up, we've got SOS 2211, and David Mosier, welcome, is presenting for the city.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The applicant is requesting to vacate a public utility, drainage, and sewer easement plat note associated with the Warm Springs Mesa subdivision number 13 and the Boulder Heights subdivision number 2. The easement vacation is required to construct a covered patio associated with a single-family house on the subject property located at 2010 South Ridge Point Way in an R1C zone. And as you can see from the aerial photograph, the subject property is located within a residential neighborhood surrounded by detached single-family homes. In 2018, a parcel located at the Boulder Heights subdivision number 2 was consolidated with the adjacent parcel in the Warm Springs Mesa subdivision number 13 in order to create a buildable parcel for a single-family house. The applicant is requesting to vacate the 7.5 foot wide utility easement along the interior side property line boundary of all the parcels of these subdivisions and the 10-foot wide utility drainage easement along the rear property line of the Warm Springs Mesa subdivision in order to construct this covered patio. And this figure here shows the easements that are requested to be vacated. As such, the planning team recommends approval of the plat note vacations. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions for David? All right, there are no questions from the city council. Is Stacy Kroll here in person or online? Stacy, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? The record to reflect that the answer was yes. And so I'm going to suggest that with no questions from staff, is there anybody here to discuss this one? We'll go ahead and close this public hearing for a motion.
Madam Mayor, Madam Mayor, I move that we approve SOS 22-11, Stacy Kroll, Boise City vacation of plat note and public utilities easement at 2010 South Ridge Point Way.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And next up, we have Delaney Garlick. Oh, you're behind the computer for SOS 21-10. And is the applicant here in person or online? In person. Wonderful. Thanks.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Before you is a request to partially vacate the public utility easement and plat note located on Lot 2 and Lot 3, Block 1 of the Pine View Plaza subdivision addressed at 1675 North Pine View Lane. In 2008, the Pine View subdivision was recorded. The plat depicts and describes areas labeled as E1 as common parking, cross-access, public utility, and drainage easement. The applicant requests to partially vacate a portion of this easement located in the northwestern and northeastern corners of the lot for a future building. All required relinquishment letters were received and the vacation would only affect the subject property. Planning team recommends approval. I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, there are no questions from council. The applicant. With that one, then you'll have to, you'll need to sign up to, Great. Yeah, just come on up to testify after I hear from the applicant. Sir, is there anything for I'm looking at the person behind you. Sorry. Are you in agreement with terms and conditions of the staff report? All right, I'll just have the record reflect that that's the case. And so with that, I'll go ahead to public testimony. Come on up.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Councilman. My name is Heather Scott. I am the site manager of the storage facility adjacent to this property, and mainly just kind of seeking some clarity on what this will entail. If you bring the photo up that Delaney had, and Delaney and I spoke about this. I think that this is kind of transferring halfway between this process and public planning with Travis something. Our question is, by vacating the easement specifically for the drainage, the 2 plots where additional buildings will go is going to partially sit on top of the existing drainage. We're just curious what the planning process will look like, because this property has flooded my facility in May 6th of 2016, and we're working with the property owners to have some issues worked out, but we just want to figure out where the drainage will be moving and how that.
And
the
that's
planning-
something that's not a question for council, more than working with staff. So what I would ask, because we couldn't answer that, and typically questions aren't taken in a public hearing, but what we've heard from you in your testimony is that you've got some concerns about drainage and flooding.
Yeah.
So the council could direct staff to connect with you and the applicant to connect with you and continue those discussions. And of course, a requirement is that a plan of mitigation would be in place before this happens.
Okay. And then the parking spaces that are being taken out, or that would also be part of the second half of the process, or?
Well, that's a decision before council tonight, whether or not that's appropriate.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Do you need me to sign
If
up?
you already signed up, that's great.
Okay.
Yeah. You put your name on one of the right one.
Out there, yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I've got you here.
Okay.
Yeah. Heather Scott. Yep. I've got you. Thank you. Right. Any questions from council? Sir, is there anything you'd like to say to wrap up? All right. The applicant is neglecting to add to the discussion. So with that, anybody else here to talk about this one? Okay. With that, I'll close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor. I move that we approve SOS 21-10 B&A Engineers Boise City vacation of a plat note and public utilities easement at 1675 North Pineview Lane, noting that neighboring properties have concerns about drainage and that is mitigated in construction.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Whittings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming. We've got next SUB 21-59 and Sabrina. Welcome. Is the applicant here in person? Wonderful. Thanks.
All right. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The item before you is a request for a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 3 buildable lots on 0.42 acres located at 1501 North Garden Street in an R1C zone. The subject property currently contains a single-family dwelling along with a detached garage and a detached studio. The home and studio will be retained and the garage will be demolished to accommodate the new lot arrangement. The subdivision will utilize a single vehicular access point from Garden Street, which will split into 2 driveways to serve the 3 residential lots. All existing trees on the site will be preserved and the subdivision complies with the density limits of the R1C zone and is compatible with the surrounding area, which is comprised of a variety of other residential uses. On March 7th, the Planning and Zoning Commission approved the associated planned unit development application with a site-specific condition requiring the applicant to install curb, gutter, and detached sidewalk along the site's frontage on Garden Street. However, upon attempting to meet this condition, the applicant found that the topography of the site and the existence of multiple Idaho power poles which support a line extending across I-184 made it infeasible to construct the required improvements. On June 6th, the commission approved a PUD modification to allow for irrigated landscaping to be provided along the site's frontage instead of the curb, gutter, and sidewalk. In conclusion, the commission unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat with no opposition, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Any questions for Sabrina?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. This is a question perhaps for the applicant, but I'll ask it now. The plan notes that the existing garage will be demolished. Wonder if the applicant had considered deconstructing that garage and reusing the materials that are able to be reused.
I'll ask the applicant to reference that when he gets up now and has a couple things.
Thank
you. Any further questions? All right, you can let us know if you're in agreement with terms and conditions, but also if you'd address the council president's question, I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor, members of council, Jaden Schneider with Bronzeville Land. I'm the applicant, 412 South 3rd Street. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, we had not considered that prior to this. Basically, the garage itself was not something that was extraordinarily special. It was built the same time as the home, and the home since has been redone. But we can definitely look into that and see if there's an opportunity for us to utilize some of the materials available. Other than that, I would just love to say thank you so much to Sabrina. I know for such a small site, this has been a little bit of a back and forth to try to get to this point, and she's just gone above and beyond to get us to this point. And she's been a great pleasure to work with, and just thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right. Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody here to testify on this? Okay, we'll go ahead and close this public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve SUB 21-59 Tulip Garden subdivision, Boise City preliminary plat at 1501 North Garden Street.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Whittings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And now our final subdivision, SOS 22-9. We've got Sabrina again. Is the applicant here in person? Thanks.
Right, Madam Mayor, members of the council, the next item before you is a request to vacate an ACHD drainage easement, partially vacate a public utilities and irrigation easement, and vacate 2 plat notes associated with Lot 23, Block 4 of Muir Woods subdivision number 2 on 0.46 acres in an R1B zone. As shown on this slide, the plat from Muir Woods subdivision number 2 depicts a 20-foot wide ACHD drainage easement and a 20-foot wide public utilities and irrigation easement along the southeastern property line of Lot 23, Block 4. Plat notes 9 and 14 also reference these easements. The applicant requests to vacate the ACHD easement, vacate the northern 10 feet of the 20-foot public utilities and irrigation easement, and vacate the associated plat notes as they apply to Lot 23 in order to allow the construction of a new detached garage 10 feet from the southeastern property line. All affected easement holders have provided written approval of the requested vacation, and the planning team recommends approval.
Thank you. Any questions for Sabrina? Right, no questions. For the applicant, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Yes, all right, the record can reflect that, yes, they are. Is anybody here to testify on this item? All right, with that, we'll go ahead and close this public hearing too. Thanks for being here.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve SOS 22-9 Nancy Frost, Boise City vacation of plat note and public utilities easement at 2928 South Goshen Way.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Whittings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move into the regular public hearings portion of our evening. First with CAR 22-8 and Jesse Lyle is here. This will be the same, the city. And then is this applicant here in person? Welcome. And then we don't expect the neighborhood association. I'll ask at the time and we'll go from there. Is anybody here to testify on this item beyond the applicant?
Madam Mayor, I do have one person online. I would just ask that they raise their hand when we get to the public hearing they'd like to speak on.
Okay, sure. All right, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, council members, the item before you is CAR 22-8, a rezone of approximately 2.06 acres from R1A to M1D. The subject property is located at 2667 Victory View Way with an industrial land use designation. On July 11th, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval with no opposition to the proposal. The subject property is adjacent to industrial zoning on the east and south sides, large lot residential on the west side, and open lands on the north side. The commission found that the proposed M1D zone is compatible with the existing mixture of residential, office, commercial, and light industrial uses in the surrounding area. In conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of CAR 22-8, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions on this? All right. You're welcome to come on up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Stephanie Hopkins with KM Engineering 5725 North Discovery Way in Boise 83713. We're in agreement with the staff report and her analysis, and I don't have anything to add. And she did a great job summarizing our request.
All
So,
right, great,
thank
thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Right, is anybody here in the room to testify? Right, how about the person online? Is this the item you'd like to testify on? Okay, with that, I'll close this public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve CAR 22-8, KM Engineering, 2667 South Victory View Way, rezone of approximately 2.06 acres from R1A to M1D.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. Any discussion? All right, clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thanks. And next up, we've got Sabrina with CAR 21-32. Is the applicant here? Welcome. And again, if somebody's online wanting to speak on this one, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll call you. Otherwise, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, the item before you is a request to annex approximately 2.2 acres located at 6780 South Cole Road with a zoning designation of C2D-DA. The subject parcel is located at the southeastern corner of the intersection of Cole Road and Lake Hazel Road, and it is surrounded on 3 sides by property within the Boise city limits. The Planning and Zoning Commission found that the proposed C2 zone was consistent with the comprehensive plan as the site is designated as planned community on the land use map. The proposal is also consistent with policies of the comprehensive plan, which encourage clustering new commercial development in the southwest in specific areas, including the area within the reserved plan community. The applicant proposes to construct a self-storage center on the site following annexation, which will require approval of a conditional use permit. The development agreement associated with the proposed annexation prohibits certain auto-oriented uses that are typically allowed in the C2 zone, which the commission found would not be appropriate in this location. The original draft of the DA also required vehicular access to the site to be provided from a shared access point on the adjacent parcel to the south, which is currently under the same ownership as the subject parcel, in order to limit the number of curb cuts along Cole Road and to minimize potential conflicts with traffic at the nearby intersection of Cole and Lake Hazel Roads. The commission found that the shared access would not be necessary if the property were developed as a self-storage or another low-traffic use, and recommended modifying the DA to allow the site to have an individual access from Cole in that case. Per the commission's recommendation, the site would be required to consolidate access with the adjacent parcel to the south if it redeveloped to a more intense use in the future. This provision would require cooperation from the adjacent parcel to the south and could effectively prohibit any more intense uses than self-storage if the parcel to the south was not willing to grant shared access in the future. Written comments were received from 2 neighbors of the property who expressed opposition to the proposed annexation. Their concerns included loss of use, impacts on property values, noise, traffic, lighting, habitat loss, and pollution. The majority of these concerns were directly related to the self-storage use proposed by the applicant. However, as that is a conditional use within the C2 zone, the compatibility of that proposed use and the feasibility of mitigating any potential negative impacts would be evaluated at the time of a future conditional use permit. In conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the annexation with the development agreement, and I will stand for any questions.
Thanks. Any questions for Sabrina?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. I do have a question. This is a unique location. There are only 137 business addresses for 34,000 people that currently reside outside the city limits in the Southwest. And to use such a unique location at the corner of two arterial roads for a self-storage unit seems like a tremendous waste of an opportunity to actually integrate some mixed use, accessible commercial uses into an area that badly needs them. And I wondered if the planning staff had any discussion about that.
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, yes, the planning team did consider that. The C2 zone does support a number of other uses that are allowed uses that would be more neighborhood focused. This slide shows some allowed uses and conditionally allowed uses in the C2 zone that could also be allowed to develop on this site. Ideally, if self-storage was permitted here, which isn't a guarantee, is that is a conditional use in this zone, that would be a use that would eventually redevelop into something more neighborhood serving.
Well, I appreciate that. I have yet to see a self-storage redevelop, including 30-year-old ones on State Street. So I guess the hope that if we approved a self-storage, it would redevelop seems pretty minimal to me. So just saying.
All right, I suggest we leave additional comments for council discussion. Are there further questions for Sabrina?
Madam Mayor.
Yep.
I just want to clarify real quick with Sabrina. If we approve the annexation and the zoning designation, we're not approving the conditional use of a self-storage facility. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Council Pro Tem Wooding, that's correct.
Okay.
This is only for the annexation. A CUP would be required for
Great.
self-storage.
So then, Madam Mayor, sorry,
Yes.
Sabrina, we would see it back again for a conditional use permit in the future.
Madam Mayor, Council Pro Tem Woodings, yes, it would go to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, with that, why don't we hear from the applicant? Is anybody here to testify on this? You are, sir, great. And yep, nope, it's not the right time, but I now I know that there's somebody in the audience that wants to talk. And anybody online that wants to talk about this one? Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Jeff Hatch with Hatch Design Architecture. Our address is 200 West 36th Street, Boise, Idaho, 83714. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. Thank you for your consideration of our annexation application this evening. We are in agreement with the staff report. I do have a presentation if need be, but with the comments and considerations, I think the main question was in regards to the conditional use. We did receive initial recommendation from planning and zoning in regards to the annexation. They felt that it was prudent that this property be zoned and annexed into the city. And they felt comfortable with that concession that it would be coming back for consideration in greater detail for that conditional use permit application. And so with that, we feel that that C2 zone provides a range of opportunities for this property. And if we can justify that storage use in the future, that will be evaluated by planning and zoning at that time, if that answers your question.
What, are there questions for the applicant? No? Okay, all right. Okay, it looks like there are no questions for you right now. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Come on up, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Never done this before. Just learning that self-storage is planned for this area. The neighbor sent me here to ask if a cell tower is going on this location. So is it too early to ask that, I guess? Is there a cell tower in plans for this? Because oftentimes cell towers go on self-storage units. So can I ask you that? No. Can that change?
Sir, this is typically the way these need to work, is that questions back and forth aren't typically
Sure.
part of a public hearing, but instead it's an opportunity for you to register your concerns. or your support.
Okay. I
So
guess-
given that this is a rezone and there will be a CUP later, I'd ask that in the time you have, you share with us those concerns it sounds like you might have, and then staff will be aware of that, the applicant will be aware of that. And then at another time when there's a CUP that comes through, I might be misspeaking, there would be an opportunity again, if there is a cell tower in there, to come and share with council your concerns about that.
Perfect. Thank you. I think I've expressed my concern and I appreciate your feedback and your instruction. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming. Would you also like to testify on this? Same guidance on questions versus concerns.
Sorry, very coincidental that I'm here. This is actually kind of more direct.
Also Heather Scott, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Sorry. I just kind of wanted to comment on the council president's reference on self-storage. So I just so happen to be here for something completely different, but have also happened to be 20 years in the storage industry. And I found a lot of times that storage facilities integrating into a more rural location have the ability to give incoming businesses kind of a foothold, a place to start. So although she's right, I've never heard of a storage facility being removed. Some at times can be reconfigured. It's extraordinarily rare. But if that is what this turns into in the future, it kind of has pros and cons to it. It's a low traffic usage, more so than a commercial location or retail, but it does kind of have a base point for a lot of incoming businesses later. And as development, construction companies can start in storage facilities. So just kind of some feedback for that.
Thanks,
So,
Heather.
welcome.
Appreciate it.
Good night.
Is there anybody else here to testify on this one?
No, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I would ask that both people who spoke on this item sign up on the sign up sheet.
Oh, yes. So there's a sheet there that has this number. It's 21-32. If you would both put your names, and if you just, sir, if you would come up after Heather and write your name down on the sheet that says 21-32.
CAR.
Yes, sorry, CAR 21-32 will be good. And with that, to the applicant, you've got a rebuttal. If you feel the need, come on up. Yeah, you can let us know you have more to say or you have nothing more to say.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you again for your consideration. I think it's a nice piece of land adjacent to Boise. Would love to annex it. So I'll stand for any other questions, but really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Consideration.
Thanks. Okay, with that, I believe that there's likely some discussion on this. I'll close the public hearing for a motion and discussion.
Madam Mayor, I actually have a question for staff before we do that.
Oops, sorry, I did it
Sorry.
too soon.
Yep.
Go ahead, Sabrina.
So this is potentially an annexation with a zoning, with a design review, development agreement, and potentially conditional use permit, depending on what they want to put it down there. This is right next to the New York Canal, and if there was ever going to be a pathway, it probably would be on this side. In one of the future discussions related to the conditional use permit or the development agreement, that would probably be the time when we would be talking about the easement that would go along the side. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, this was also discussed at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. The comprehensive planning team has provided feedback that based on the pathways plan, they don't anticipate a pathway on this property. But if we did in the future want that, the CUP could be a time to address that.
Okay.
All right, any further questions for Sabrina? All right, now I'll close the public hearing. Sorry, council member.
It's okay, Madam Mayor. I move that we approve CAR 21-32 Hatch Design Architecture 6780 South Cole Road, annexation of approximately 2.2 acres with a zoning designation of C2D/DA.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. Discussion, Council President?
Madam Mayor, thank you. This is certainly land that should be inside the city, but I really am concerned with the use that's being talked about. I understand it will come back to us with a conditional use if it does come to fruition in terms of an application. I do think that this part of the city, if we're going to make it part of the city, deserves a discussion about how people will be able to access anything besides residential uses. If we're going to ultimately solve some of our transportation issues, we're going to have to make sure that people can access at least some of their daily needs without getting in a car and without traveling great distances. This is one of the few remaining sites on this arterial corridor that might be used for that. And I just want to make sure that as we approve this, we note that. I would also ask, after Councilmember Halliburton asked his question, I didn't continue to question, but as I think about it, I'm not sure why we wouldn't include, because the rezone and a development agreement is the time to do so, that at the time of development, the city would consider a pathway along the New York Canal. It really is much harder on a conditional use than as part of a development agreement. So I'm sorry I didn't ask that question earlier. I was thinking about it and just didn't ask that question quickly enough. But I do wonder if this would be a better time to make sure that we have that ability at some point in the future. I will be supporting the motion for annexation as long as, I guess, with the request that the maker of the motion note that there are concerns about commercial uses in this general vicinity, and that the city should really come up with some kind of a strategy for what we're going to do here. Or at least direction after the motion to do that. I'm just really concerned that we're eating up little tiny pieces of what could potentially be little mixed use centers for uses that never will be compatible with that.
Madam Mayor, I didn't include that in part of the motion, but I was going to include it in my discussion afterward because I share the same concern. I really think that there's a better opportunity here with allowed uses in the C2 zone to really provide that neighborhood commercial that this neighborhood is going to need, from, you know, anything from childcare to grocery to personal services. And having such a prominent intersection such as this one with a use like self-storage that's not an active use, it seems like not the best and highest use of this space. So I would encourage the developer to consider a more active use that's neighborhood serving on this. But with all of that said, it makes perfect sense to annex this parcel. It makes perfect sense to designate it as C2. And so I think that all of that is very appropriate, and I look forward to it being developed, hopefully in a way that reflects the neighborhood. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
this isn't identified in the Pathways Master Plan. It is a new annexed piece of land, or it might be a new annexed piece of land. And I think we knew when we were creating the Pathways Master Plan that we weren't going to get every single piece on there in one fell swoop, and that we may need to make sure that we look at those opportunities in the future. And so I would ask that we do consider that in the future on this piece of property, because that would be a linkage that we wouldn't be able to get back if we ever did change our mind.
Anything further? Okay. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you all. Good to see you tonight. And next up, we have an appeal, DRH 22-123. Got Josh Wilson presenting for the city, the appellant, Jeffrey Wallace.
I'm here on behalf of Wallace Custom Design and Renovation. I'm Kirsten Wallace.
Wonderful, thanks. And then we will have, is Neighborhood Association here? Is the Neighborhood Association online? Okay, and we have one party of record, Greg Goins. Is Greg online? I'm going to ask while we get started, because this is an appeal and Greg is listed, I need to see if you can speak as a property owner. So I'll ask the legal team about that, and we'll know by the time we get to it. Okay. All right. Thanks. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. The applicant and appellant tonight is before you to discuss conditions of approval placed on a certificate of appropriateness that was approved by the Historic Preservation Commission on property at 1604 North 9th Street. It is a corner property at the northeast corner of 9th and Sherman in the north end. The site plan of the existing residence shows the front of the property on 9th Street. That is the character defining facade for the purposes of historic preservation and our discussion tonight. And then there is a street side facing elevation on Sherman Street, which is also the subject of the application. So the applicant requested multiple changes to the contributing historic structure. They have requested to replace and widen the front door to a more appropriate width. The current door is very narrow and does not meet egress standards for building code. Additionally, all the vinyl windows on the structure will be replaced. The existing faux gable above the entry will be slightly widened to be centered on the new door. The columns would be widened and also the steps would be widened in conjunction with that. And those are depicted here on that character defining front elevation. On the south facing Sherman Street elevation, again, those vinyl windows will be replaced and an existing French door is proposed to be replaced with a sliding door. Staff's recommendation was in support of the application. Our report found that there has been substantial changes to this structure that bring the historical integrity into question. There was a substantial side addition you can see in the photo on the right that created a wraparound porch that continues on to a substantial addition on the Sherman Street side of the property. Additionally, Nina testified at the Historic Preservation Commission meeting and essentially supported staff's position, found that the structure was of questionable historic integrity and they were in support of these changes. So the applicant at that meeting, the Historic Preservation Commission approved the application, but with additional conditions of approval. Those additional conditions were that the front door size would remain the same. And if it is replaced, it should be a panel wood door, not the full glass door that was proposed by the applicant. And additionally, that front gable would remain unchanged. The applicant did appeal the Historic Preservation Commission's decision as before you tonight. So the appellant's grounds for appeal are listed here. The appellant has provided supporting documentation in the appeal memo, citing the commission's failure to consider surrounding properties within the district when discussing the proportions and the front entry and the change to a full glass door. Additionally, the commission failed to consider the substantial changes to the property which were constructed in 2001, which have significantly altered the historic character of the building and lessened the historic integrity of the structure. The appellant has correctly asserted that this structure does not retain a high degree of historic integrity and that these changes proposed would be in keeping with those changes that were approved in 2001, bringing some proportionality and balance back to the structure. So with that, staff does recommend that the appeal be upheld. That conditions 1E and 1F that the Historic Preservation Commission placed on the application be removed. The Historic Preservation Commission did cite specific guidelines when deliberating towards their decision, but did fail to recognize the lack of historic integrity remaining in the structure, and that was the basis of their decision. So with that, I would stand for any questions. Thank you.
Questions for Josh?
Madam Mayor.
Yeah, let's go with the council president and then Councilmember Halliburton.
Thank you. Josh, just real quickly, do the recommendations include also allowing a full glass door, or is it just the width of the door and the width of the portico? I guess I did wonder about that. The glass door does not seem in keeping with the rest of the surrounding neighborhood, the rest of the surrounding buildings.
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg. So the original proposal by the applicant and the staff recommendation did propose allowing the change to the full glass door. The commission in their action did condition it that full glass door not be allowed.
So my question is, if we were to uphold the appeal and allow the bigger door and the bigger portico, would we also be allowing the full glass door, or is that a separate issue?
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, the council has the ability to modify the conditions of approval on appeal, and you could modify that condition placed by the commission to address the full glass door.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I think I've been spending too much time around Council President Clay because I was going to ask the exact same question. I guess I maybe have another couple of questions that might be related. When somebody does a remodel on a house like this and they've got vinyl windows, we typically, if it was a contributing house, we wouldn't allow them to put vinyl windows back in. We would make them put wood windows in, correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, that is correct. The applicant in this case has proposed on their own accord to replace all the vinyl windows in the home.
Yeah. And so when we're looking at the types of materials that would be allowed, would we be allowing a glass door in any historic remodel?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, yeah, potentially yes. So door and window materials are restricted in that they cannot be vinyl, and on primary facades of buildings, they can't be what's called a composite or a fibrex, but they could be fiberglass, metal clad wood, or wood itself. It doesn't specifically speak to the amount of glass. That would be on a case by case basis. And in this case, the commission felt like it wasn't appropriate for the style of home.
Great. And Madam Mayor, just to follow up there. So to be clear, there isn't actually anything that says that you can't have a glass door in a historic house when you be doing a remodel. But in this particular circumstance, that's what the Historic Preservation Committee had found.
That's accurate.
Okay, great.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
one more quick question on the door, Josh. This west elevation shows a divided glass door with lights, with little glass panels, LITES, which match the proposed lights in the windows. Is that what they're proposing, or is that just, I guess what I'm asking is, when we're talking about a glass door, are we talking about one big solid piece of glass like you'd see at a bank, or are we talking about kind of prairie style divided lights like you see in this image, or do we know?
Madam Mayor, Council Member Bajent, they are proposing the divided lights seen in the drawing on the screen right now that would match those windows. I'll let the applicant confirm or deny that.
Thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and hear from the applicant's representative. And perhaps you could answer that question that just came up. And then Terry, as part of the public hearing, and because you're the applicant, even though Greg was listed, you'll be able to come and testify.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Kirsten Wallace.
Kirsten, could you put the mic a little closer? Thanks.
My name is Kirsten Wallace with Wallace Custom Design and Renovation. I'm at 816 North Haines Street in Boise, Idaho, 83712. And
so Kristen, I am worried that the two council members online aren't able to hear you, and that's why just having that a little closer.
Okay, is that better?
That's so much better.
It's very echoey.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Okay. So Kirsten Wallace with Wallace Custom Design and Renovation. I just want to clarify, it sounds like there's some questions by the council members and regarding this application. So the appellant is challenging only two site conditions of approval by the Historic Preservation Commission, which was E and F, that required the front door size to remain unchanged, and if replaced, to be replaced with solid wood door, and also that the front door gable should remain unchanged and be kept in its current location. So appellant had proposed full glass, 48-inch wide, 8-foot tall door to match the proposed sliding glass doors, which you saw in the depiction. It's kind of difficult to see, but the center door, for example, in the east elevation, there has the grid pattern. All of the doors were approved by the Historic Preservation Commission, with the exception, in our understanding, of the proposed grid patterns. So it was our understanding, after conversing with staff after the Historic Preservation Commission made its determination, that the grid patterns were not going to be allowed. So they were approved, the HPC approved a 1:1 light pattern for all operable windows, which left a question about the grid pattern for the sliding glass doors. And it was our understanding that we wouldn't want the grid pattern if the 1:1 light pattern was going to be what was approved for the windows. It would no longer match. So we do not, and Ms. Goins can correct me if I'm wrong, but because the windows have already been ordered. But it's my understanding that the sliding glass doors are a full light, single pane, metal clad wood Pella door. And they are not going to have the grids that are depicted in the drawings that you see before you. And then I believe there was also a question raised that a full glass door would not be in keeping with the neighborhood. So one of the considerations that the HPC should have looked at is what is in the neighborhood. And instead, they just simply looked at what the front door was and didn't look at any of the neighborhood, either the adjacent homes or other applications that they have approved in the past. So in the brief that I submitted, I gave examples where the commission has approved full light glass doors, and also pictures of adjacent homes that had glass doors. And I don't know if Mr. Wilson can pull that up, but I'm specifically referring to.
Yep, he's able to.
Okay. I'm specifically referring to the example I provided in DRH 19-176, which is on the last page of the memorandum, or close to. Okay.
When we need that music,
I know, the waiting music.
Madam Mayor, apologies. It'll take me just a few minutes to get that.
Sure.
So I would go ahead with your
Okay.
testimony. No
And
problem.
there were also, I also had a footnote with photographs of adjacent properties depicting glass doors. So it's not true that you cannot approve a glass door in a neighborhood, in the historic neighborhood. And I'll specifically note for the record that the example I provided in the appellant brief, DRH 19-176, was a contributing home with a high degree of historical integrity. It had a full solid wood paneled door and with no side lights, and it was changed to a full glass door with 2 glass side lights. So I believe that the proposal to change the existing wood paneled door to a full glass single pane door would be in keeping with Historic Preservation Commission guidelines. And it would also balance out the rest of the home, which is proposed to have sliding glass doors with single light. One of the design guidelines that's applicable in Chapter 5 of the design guidelines, which applies to new construction, indicates that the Historic Preservation Commission should consider the fenestration patterns and should avoid awkward door and window spacing. So, here's one example of doors in the neighborhood where they have glass. We had proposed something similar to the middle picture there, but again, we're not opposed at this point to removing the grid since one of the conditions of approval was 1/1 light patterns for all operable windows. But anyway, as I was continuing, so the HPC should consider fenestration patterns and should avoid awkward door and window spacing. So in the particular case that we have before the Historic Preservation Commission, we're proposing sliding glass doors. So a full solid wood door is going to look extremely out of place in contrast with all of the other sliding glass doors that were approved. And so that is something that should be taken into consideration under Chapter 5 of the design guidelines, which is applicable to new construction. It also appears that staff concedes that the Historic Preservation committed error when it looked at Chapter 3 of the design guidelines. That chapter pertains to historic renovations and restorations. And here we argued that this does not apply because the home has lost a considerable amount of historic integrity with the renovations that occurred in 2001. And even if it did apply, it requires a new design to be congruous with the character of the building. And again, the glass door that we would propose would be congruous with the character of the building as approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. And one other thing of note that the Historic Preservation did not reference congruity of their decision with respect to the front door and gable. So for example, what they did was they approved all these other changes, but said, oh no, this one historic element, the door and the gable, that can't be changed. And that's not in keeping with the guidelines, because what they did approve is widening the front steps and moving the pillars. So then what will happen is the existing wood panel front door is going to be off center, and same with the gable, and it won't match anything that is proposed on the house and which all of the conditions that were approved. And then, Mr. Wilson, can you go down to the last picture I was referring to? Yeah, there. So that was the existing home. It's a minimal traditional home. I referenced DRH 19-176. It's a solid door. And the approved modifications are a full glass door with 2 glass side lights. So if that was approved, I can't see why a single pane full glass door in our case would not be acceptable. So one other thing I want to note is that, see if I can see correctly. So in our application, the appellant proposed a 48-inch wide, 8-inch tall glass door. But in light of the Historic Preservation Commission's approval of the sliders and the windows with a 1/1 light pattern, and upon further reflection regarding the proportionality of the door in relation to the front steps and pillars, the applicant would request that there be some modification of the site conditions of approval. And we would propose a full light glass door that is 42 inches wide and 7 feet tall to achieve the appropriate symmetry with the proposed improvements that were approved by the commission. And also that I think it's F, the front door gable, to remain unchanged. We would also propose that that front gable be enlarged as well to appear symmetrical with the new front door and the wider porch pillars and the wider front steps. And with that, I have nothing further unless you have questions.
Thanks. Are there questions for the applicant's representative?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of quick questions. So I'm actually frankly glad to hear that these aren't divided light doors. To me, that would be much more incongruous with the style of this house than a full glass door. Having said that, I'm curious if the applicant ever considered a door that had a top window but bottom glass, which is very, very typical in this neighborhood, especially this part of the neighborhood. It's one I live in and walk regularly. As I read the guidelines on this, it doesn't have any specifics saying you can or can't do one thing or the other, but what it talks about is congruity with the existing homes in the neighborhood. I'm not quite sure that a full glass door is congruous, even though you found an example or two of such. But certainly glass in a door is something that we see all over this neighborhood. So, and then finally, I would say thank you for addressing the proportionality. I was a bit concerned about the original proposal to do a 4x8. I think the 42x7 is much more proportional. But the question is, have you considered a half glass rather than a full glass?
I believe that was a possibility, but I believe the applicant can better, or I believe that Ms. Goins can better speak to that.
Okay.
Further questions? All right, we'll go ahead and hear from Ms. Goins. And I'll just will you make sure that, or maybe you already did you put your name on one of these pieces of paper? All right,
I did.
good to see you. Great, we've got it right here. Thanks.
Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for hearing us tonight. To the door, full glass is very common in the neighborhood. I'm not really here to fight for a full glass door or not. It would be the size and the proportion that is the most important to me. Grids were never part of the opportunity in the remodel, and it kind of does stand out. So they're all double hung window or single hung windows. And I proposed the full glass door just to be incongruent with everything else. I am willing to reconsider that for full wood door, full black door, second to the full glass. I think the half glass is just not the feel of the house that I'd wanted. I wanted glass to bring light into the house because it's smaller in the front there. The house needed loving, and that's was my intent, is to love it up and to bring it to its highest and best purpose. The gable is actually falling apart. It needs to be rebuilt. It is somewhat off center, even as it sits. It is off center to the pillars of the remodel that I did in 2001. So I am standing for the enlarged door, the enlarged gable, and the enlarged steps. So, and again, all the windows are double hung and the glass sliders are double hung. They're all visually congruent. So I would appreciate approval of removing the conditions.
Any questions for Terry? All right, thank you.
Mayor, just note that I appreciate your comments and thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got, I messed this up, Stacy and Thomas Crawl on this. I wonder if this was just, are any of you Stacy and Thomas Crawl? Okay, I think they probably signed up for on the wrong piece of paper. Is anybody here to testify on this item? No. Anybody online for this? No. All right. Are there any further questions for staff or the applicant before I close this appeal?
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Question for staff. If we were to overturn or not overturn, if we were to uphold the appeal, would that incorporate the request that the applicant's representatives made today in front of us? The door, the updated door size, and then the updated, I think, width of the gable.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton. So yeah, if the council acted tonight by upholding the appeal and removing conditions 1E and 1F, that would eliminate the restrictions that were placed on that front door and the gable. So the applicant could go to that size of door that they have proposed and the style of door they could. And to clarify, I did misspeak that the commission did get rid of those divided lights. So the applicant is correct. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions?
Madam Mayor, I guess just to clarify, Josh, if we were to uphold the appeal and we wanted to ensure that the new door is 7 by 42 and not 8 by 48, wouldn't we want to specify that and ask you to return findings or conditions that reflect that?
Madam Mayor, Council President Clegg, absolutely. We could draft a new condition that reflected that and bring that back for council approval.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing. Council President, I'm going to suggest that you consider making a motion since you had a special request.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will do that. Madam Mayor, I move that we uphold the appeal of DRH 22-00123 and with the added condition that staff return to us the correct door size that was proposed tonight in proportionality to the new gable and new columns and stairway, that as part of this, we allow the applicant to determine the appropriate door design, whether that's full glass or partial glass.
Second.
We have a motion second discussion.
Madam Mayor, as I read the historic guidelines, the guidelines are not specific in terms of door type. They do ask that they be congruous with the neighborhood. I would note that rarely in the very historic homes are full glass doors. Were they original? Even when there was a lot of glass in the door, there was typically a pretty large wooden part at the bottom of the door, and would ask the applicant to ensure that as they choose this door, it is congruous with others in the neighborhood. But because the guidelines are not specific, I don't feel, and because the commission approved the rest of the sliding doors in this other style, I don't think it's appropriate if we're going to uphold this appeal to determine for the applicant what the door design should be. So I'm comfortable with them deciding that.
Madam Mayor, I'll be supporting the motion, and I think it was a really good compromise to reduce the size of the door just slightly, because I think that is more appropriate to that small front facade of the house. I don't feel particularly strongly about the design of the door. And as I was listening to the staff report and reviewing the record, it seemed to me that the Historic Preservation Committee or Commission disregarded the facts and circumstances that were presented, namely that the existing structure does not possess a high degree of historical integrity due to the additions and alterations to the original structure, as was noted in 2001. So we have a house that has been heavily modified, that's really trying to come back in line with some of its historic bones. And I think that that's really great. And that's a wonderful goal. I grew up in a house that had a very large light in the front door. It was a 1908 bungalow. So I know that they do exist in the North End. And I think that one of the fabulous things about the North End is the variety of different front doors. Like, I don't want them to all look the same. I want them to all be different. I really think that that's part of the character of the neighborhood. So wonderful renovation plans. Thank you for doing this. My friend used to live across the street from this house. And I always thought, oh, it's such a cute house. It's kind of been a Franken house throughout the years where it gets added onto and there's different little nooks and crannies. So I'm really looking forward to walking by this house again once it's renovated and historic and beautiful. So thank you.
All right. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Madam Mayor, before you do that, could I add one last thing? I appreciate
sorry.
Councilmember President Pro Tem adding the comments about the reasons for the decision. And in addition to returning a new condition, I would ask that the staff return reasons for the decision based on the discussion. Thank you.
Clerk, will you call the roll?
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Whittings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And with that, we can take a motion to adjourn.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
The motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Oh, no, I think Elaine was saying yes. All right, thanks,
I said
everybody.
aye.
Okay, good night.